I'd like to welcome you this evening to our meeting, and also thank you for coming out. We do have, are supposed to have Pastor McGill here for our invocation, and he has not arrived yet, so we're going to get started, and I've asked Commissioner Legg if he will lead us in our invocation, which will be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. So if you all will, please rise.
Father, we thank you for another opportunity to gather here to do the business for our town. We thank you for the beautiful weather that you've given us this past week. We pray at this time of the year that we know why we celebrate Christmas. We appreciate your birth. We appreciate all that you've done for us. Now we ask that you guide us in decisions we have to make here. We thank you for those who are here this evening to join with us to help make these decisions. And we ask that you bless each and every one as they return on their way home tonight. We ask that you watch over our first responders, keep them safe. We don't know sometimes what they really mean to us till we need them at our door. We ask that you watch over and bless our military throughout the world. And we'll never fail to give you the praise in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. At this time, do we have any additions or deletions to our agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve our agenda as it is before you?
So moved.
Have a motion to have a second?
Madam Mayor.
Before y'all
Yes,
vote,
sir.
we did add a closed session. Do y'all have that on your agenda?
No.
Yes, we did. I see it.
Oh, yeah,
All right.
yeah, it is on the bottom, yeah.
All right, we do have to add a closed session for attorney-client privilege pertaining to existing litigation with American Uniform Sales, and that would be a closed session added, and that would go under new business item D. And the other one you said was not needed, the other addendum, or you want to go with it?
The other was a deletion. I
A
think
deletion,
the
okay.
discussion was to leave it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so with that addition, we do now, you want to make your motion to approve the agenda with that addition? Okay, and my second?
Here.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed.
Getting hard going back to the second after so
I
long.
know, been
Been
away from it for so long. I have a special recognition this evening. This is something that we started this, and it's been very important to our town that we recognize those in our town that contribute the most. And I have a recommendation, and I'm going to read this to you, why this person was nominated, or this business was nominated. The Diner by Chef Glenn and Company has demonstrated extraordinary commitment to the Hope Mills community, as well as support to the town of Hope Mills social events and the Hope Mills Creative Arts Council. Chef Glenn and his staff have had a major impact in our community. He has demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to the Hope Mills community as well as to the general public. His community service efforts are unique and far-reaching. Currently, Chef Glenn provides meals monthly for the Alms House Love Lunch Program, a local nonprofit agency that serves over 20,000 meals yearly. He regularly supports the Hope Mills Chamber of Commerce by providing meals for their monthly luncheon. Chef Glenn has made a difference in our community. He exemplifies the generosity of the town and has positively impacted the people of our community. Chef Glenn has used his skills, knowledge, and abilities to help others. His love and dedication to our town and the entire community make him and his team an excellent candidate for this award. So I'd like Chef Glenn and his wife to come forward. I'll meet you down on the floor. He is being recognized as the Small Business Community Service Award, and this is in recognition of his service to our community. Thank you for all you do. Should've stayed down there. I'm just gonna come down and use the microphone down there. It's a whole lot easier than getting up and down. When I talk loud. We're very fortunate in Hope Mills that we have 3 major high schools that do a lot for our community. They volunteer, we have ROTC, they have SGA, they have National Honor Society, Key Clubs, all sorts of organizations within the schools that do a great deal. Oftentimes, we forget to recognize them. Unique thing, though, that I found that I thought was especially nice is because the state of North Carolina, if you request and if you give reasons why, they will actually provide you a special recognition. So this year, through the commitment and helping us through our litter sweeps, volunteering, I've got pictures I've been trying to post that you'll see on Facebook, on social media, why this group is so important because of all the things they do. But we have a special certificate of appreciation signed by Roy Cooper and James H. Strogman III. And for those of you that don't know, the Department of Transportation Secretary is actually from Hope Mills. His daddy lives in Hope Mills. So he has signed this, Roy Cooper has signed this, and it's for a commitment to preserving the environment of North Carolina by participating in the Litter Sweeps Fall Cleanup Campaign. And this is presented to the Southview High School Key Club. And if you will, let's see if we can't get a picture of them so that they can have this. This plaque that is presented by the state is presented very rarely, but you do have to have the similar service, and they've done that. Thank you. And the other members of our youth group is here. I'd like them just to stand so you can see. We've got some outstanding youth in Hope Mills, and they make up, this is part of our youth leadership. We've got a larger participation this year, but I want to thank them. And what their project is this year is Hope Mills Beautiful. And I know they've worked up a slogan. What is your slogan?
Be a part of the solution, not the
This part of the solution, not the pollution. So they're going to be doing PSAs, they're going to be doing stuff within their high school, and they're going to be helping us as we move forward to clean up the litter in Hope Mills. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Next, we have a presentation from Dolores Taylor, Cumberland County Community Development Director, to provide information about the various programs offered through CCCD and to discuss the survey that will be distributed throughout Cumberland County to assess the needs and gaps in the community in order for CCD to prepare its consolidated plan and the annual action plan. I'll invite Dolores Taylor to come to the microphone, and welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. So it is that time of year again where Cumberland County Community Development prepares its annual action plan, and what that is basically a plan that identifies the potential projects and the funding resources that we will use to fund those projects in the upcoming year beginning in July. And it's also that time of year where we prepare our 5-year strategic plan, which is also our consolidated plan for the cycle that will begin July 1 of 2020 and end June 30th of 2025. So the strategic plan is basically where we identify the priority needs in our community. And that will require, in order for it to be a comprehensive plan, that will require broad input from the citizens in our community, as well as public and private agencies, especially those that serve low to moderate income citizens in our community. Because our funding sources, which includes Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership funds, come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, we are required to prepare and report these plans to HUD. And so basically I wanted to make sure that you are aware that in order for us to collect obtain input from the community. We have made available a survey that was put out by the consultants that we hired, Urban Design Ventures. And that survey is available still on the Cumberland County's website through the Community Development Department. Now, once the plan is implemented, well, prior to the implementation, we do have to put it out for public review and comment for at least 30 days. And we then submit our final plan to HUD in May of 2020. And then that plan is implemented by providing direct services to the residents of Cumberland County and through a request for proposal for certain types of projects. Now, our request for proposal is usually available between January and March for the upcoming year, and it usually we usually solicit funding for activities that include affordable housing, renovation and acquisition of affordable housing, public facilities, infrastructure, and public service projects. And so, again, the survey is available online, and we welcome everyone's input. And for more information, you can also go through the Cumberland County website under the Community Development Department, or contact us through our phone number, our main number at 910-323-6112. Thank
Okay.
you. And if
Thank
you have
you,
any
sir.
questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Does anyone have any questions for?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Next, we have our fiscal year 2018-2019 audit presentation. I'll invite Mr. Holland to the microphone. And before you, you have the big form, and also you have what he will be working out of, which is in the little small thin black notebook.
Good evening. We have tonight the presentation by Stuart Hill from our auditors, Thompson, let me get the letters right, Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams, that does our annual audit. They have completed it. They've sent it into the Local Government Commission by the deadline of October 31st. It has also been approved, and no comments from the Local Government Commission. So it was a clean audit. And Stuart's going to come up and go over the highlights. So if you have this report here, he's going to go through most of the slides in there, and then after he's done, I've got a few things that I'd like to mention to you.
Thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for allowing us to once again do your audit for the fiscal year June 30, 2019. As I said, we're not going to go through the thick one. We don't have enough time to do that, and you wouldn't want to anyway, I don't think. But you have it there. All of the items in the smaller packet that you have are key items from the larger one. So as it's a similar format to what we've done in the past, whereby we have a couple of pages of data. But we're going to look at the charts. The charts are all created from the data that's in that black binder on page 4. So with that, as Drew said, the audit report has been submitted and approved, and there's no findings or anything that's wrong. So that's what you strive for, and congratulations to the town of Hope Mills, and thanks to Drew and his staff for helping us through the audit process. So that makes it so much easier for us when they've got their stuff together, and they do. So congratulations on that. So if we can go over to page. Yeah, you can go ahead, and those are the numbers we were talking about. There's 2 or 3 pages of numbers there. We won't dive into those. You're welcome to look at them at all. But so for the chart that we have up now, that's at the top of page 5 in your binder. This represents your a 5-year trend or 5-year illustration of what your total fund balance was, your total general fund balance, with the blue bars, and the red bars represent the amount of that fund balance that is already reserved or committed to some other, some other projects. You can see that in 2015, your total fund balance was about 7.9 million, and in 2019 is about 7.7 million. The amount that was reserved or designated, the red ones, was 4.2 million in 2015, and it's 2.8 million in 2019. So those things go up and down, and we can look in the details, and Drew has all the knowledge in his head as to what the ups and downs are. So if you have questions on that, we can certainly get you answers on that. But that's the picture for the 5 years for the total fund balance and the reserved and designated fund balances. On the next page of the presentation, we see that we have the total fund balance as a percentage of the general fund expenditures. The blue line represents Hope Mills numbers. The red line represents an average of similar towns or by population across the state of North Carolina. The red line does not go all the way through 2019 because those numbers are not quite available from the state just yet. So you can see that your general fund total, your general fund balance was 68.91% of the general fund expenditures in 2015, and it's 54.91% in 2019. There's reasons for that. As we've talked about in our previous meeting tonight, sometimes you collect funds and it goes up, and in 1 year, and then the project expenditures get spent in the next year, so it comes down some. But you can see that your 54.91% is right in line with what the state average is for other similar towns. So previously, you were quite a bit above some of the other towns. On the next page, we're looking at the unassigned portion of the fund balance. That means that part that's the difference between the total fund balance and the fund balance that was designated or reserved previously. So you can see a similar curve there. So that's also a percentage of the general fund expenditures. On the following page, we're going to look at the revenues over or under expenditures for the general fund. So we can see for 2015 through 2017, your revenues exceeded your expenditures. For the last couple of years, the expenditures have exceeded the revenues, primarily because a lot of the projects were being done in those 2 years, and so that's when the expenditures are coming out. So that's why you see that kind of a trend on this particular chart. The next page, we have just a visual of where your cash balances are. That means your bank accounts and cash on hand accounts, where they lie. Most of it's in the general fund. You can see the vast majority of the numbers are on the page that you can see the actual amounts. But you can see that most of it's in the general fund, the rest of it's on the other governmental funds. Same thing with the fund balances on the right. Most of your fund balance is in the general fund, the rest of it being in the other governmental funds. Again, the actual dollar amounts are provided as well. Okay. The next page, we're looking at your property tax rates. The blue line represents Hope Mills at 46 cents per hundred, and the red line represents, again, the amounts for similar towns, average amounts for similar towns of similar size. So you can see that you're just a tad above that, but it's right neck and neck there. The next page, we reflect your collection percentages. So you can see that your collection percentages have been 99.86%, 99% across the board, basically. which is just a tad above the state averages. The red is the state average. The green, we added that one on that. That's statewide regardless of the size of the towns. So you can see they all are trending right along together there. So. This slide, we reflect the property valuations on the left with the red bars, and then the actual levy amounts for your ad valorem taxes is on the right side in the blue. So for 2015, your actual property values was about $1,097 million. In 2019, the total property values were $1,168 million, so it's gone up a good bit. And the actual levy amounts was in 2015 about $5 million, and it's gone up to about $5.4 million, close to $5.4 million in 2019. This chart represents just a breakdown of the types of things that your general fund revenues represent. So you can see here that the largest portion of your general fund revenues are local option sales taxes, or intergovernmental revenues, which is largely local option sales taxes. Also includes Powell bill and FEMA monies. So those and a few other things, but those are the large ones. Second largest category is the ad valorem taxes we just talked about a minute ago. And then the third is sales and services, which garbage collection is a lot of it. There's other few things in there, as well, some permits and things I think Drew mentioned earlier. And then we have a similar chart on the last page that reflects the breakdown of the general fund expenditures, so that you can see where you're spending your money. You can see that by far the largest category of expenditures is public safety, followed by the general government, and then third, cultural and recreational. And then you can see the other smaller items indicated as well. So, I mean, with this is a quick and dirty kind of picture of some of the key items from the audit report. There's tons of detail in there. If you have time to look through it and have any questions or anything, either now or later, we're always happy to try to get you an answer. So if you have questions now, I'll be glad to take them. If you have questions later, if you can get with Drew, he can get you in contact with us, and we can try to get you an answer at a later time if it doesn't come up tonight. So.
Is there anyone that has a question at this time?
No.
Well, speaking for the board, I'd like to thank you and also thank our finance director, Mr. Holland, for outstanding work. But it's always nice to get an audit with all the pluses, all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. So we congratulate our staff, and led by Drew especially, with presenting us with this financial report. And I guess we could have a motion to accept this report as it is given to us. Do we need to do that, or we just accept it as it is?
You can make a motion to.
I think that would be,
I'll make a motion, we accept the report as presented.
I'll second.
have a motion, a second. Any other discussion or comments that you would like to make? Okay, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And Drew, did you have something else you want to say?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Merry
coming
Christmas.
this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over a few things.
Okay.
This, the complete CAFR here, and CAFR stands for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. When you have time, some good reading that you may want to do is starting on page, let me find it, 10, you've got the management discussion and analysis. It's referred to as the MD&A. That gives you a lot of information about the town, some of our financial information, more instead of looking at the charts that have all the numbers. It's a description of what some of those numbers mean and what some of those numbers are. So I would suggest reading the MD&A starting at page 10, and then also there's a section just beyond the financial statements. It's called the notes to the financial statements, starting on page 24. And that gives you a pretty good outline of every financial aspect of the town, reading through the notes. It's several pages. It's very boring information, but it's very good information if you want to read that. And then in the back of your statements, you have, it's the statistical section. And Kenwana was enjoying looking at some of those charts earlier tonight in our finance meeting. But starting on page, I believe it's 63, you have in the back there's about 18 different charts back there, and it gives you a 10-year history of some of the financial information for the town. And not just financial, but population, property tax wise, just all different things related to the town. It gives you a 10-year comparison of those numbers. So I would suggest if you do want to look at something in the report, those are 3 things that you could look at. And again, if you have any questions, you can always give me a call or let me know. Thanks a lot.
All righty, thank you, sir.
And this will be put online. I'm going to be out of the office a couple of days, so either Friday or next Monday, we'll get it and have it available online.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we have public comments, and I have, no, we don't. We have public hearing. I'm sorry. I saw public and read comments. We have case P19-44. It's a rezoning of .37 plus or minus acres from R6A residential to CP plan commercial or to a more restrictive zoning district. It's located at 4854 and 4860 Cumberland Road, and it was submitted by Roscoe and Dale Strickland, the owner. And I'll turn it over to Mr. McLaughlin.
Hello, Madam Mayor, Board, Commissioners. As stated, this is case P1944. I request to rezone the R6A from R6A to CP. This is a regional view of the area. Now, in terms of background and recent activity, subject property is a 0.37 acre tract located at 4854 and 4860 Cumberland Road with approximately 98 feet of frontage and 150 feet of lot depth. Located along the north side of Cumberland Road, the property is developed with a manufactured home and an accessory structure in the zone under the R6A residential district. As it relates to the surrounding zoning, all parcels immediately adjacent to the north, south, east, and west are zoned under the CP planned commercial district. This portion of Cumberland Road is an established commercial corridor with a large residential area to the west and southwest designated under the R6A district. In terms of recent activity, Town of Hope Mills Board of Commissioners recently approved a rezoning request from R6A to CP as well on the 1.38 acre property adjacent to the parcel in question, tied to case P1934 at the August 19th board meeting. 3.22 acres of an overall 10.42 acre tract to the immediate north of the subject property was also approved by the Board of Commissioners for a rezoning request, also from R6A to CP, on September 9th, tied to case P1745. This is your existing zoning. The property is outlined in red, as you can see. This is the only R6A district within an entire area that's zoned CP, but you do see an R6A, well-established R6A area to the far west and southwest. This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is your existing land use. The area is comprised of single-family residential, multifamily, commercial, and institutional land uses, made up of everything from convenience stores to fast food restaurants, lawn mower repair, churches, barbershops, and things of that nature. As you can see, water and sewer is available to the subject property. There are no hydric soils or hydric inclusion soils in the area. And here are your site photographs. This is a view of the subject property. This is a view east along Cumberland Road. Subject property is on the left side of the screen. This is a view directly across the street from the subject property. This is a view looking west along Cumberland Road. Subject property is on the right side of your screen. And in terms of your land use policy, compliance to 2030 growth plan calls for urban. Southwest Cumberland land use plan calls for heavy commercial, both of which are conducive to the request to CP, and there is no current proposal for this development. And as it relates to recommendations, Hope Mill staff is recommending approval, Cumberland County staff is recommending approval, and the Cumberland County Joint Planning Board recommending approval 8-0. And I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that you may have, and the motion is located in your packets.
Are there any questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Since this is a public hearing, we would ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this rezoning.
Excuse me, Madam Commissioners, I would like to recommend that you do proceed with this particular change in of zoning. It is a piece that needs to be done to make all the rest of it match correctly. And this one is worthwhile doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close public hearing?
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion and a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
If there are no questions for me, your motion is on the second page of my staff
Okay.
report.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion in case P19-44, the Hope Mills Board of Commissioners approved the rezoning request from R6A residential to CP Plan Commercial and find that this request is consistent with the adopted Southwest Cumberland Land Use Plan, which calls for heavy commercial at this location. The Hope Mills Board of Commissioners further finds that approval of the request is reasonable and in the public interest because the subject property is served by public water and sewer, and the requested district is in harmony with the surrounding CP zoning and existing land uses at a heavily trafficked intersection.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
And now, in this part of our agenda would be public comments, but we have no one to sign up for public comments. And I have been asked to ask if there's anything that you would like moved from our consent agenda to new business. Is there anything? Having asked that question, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as it is before you.
So be
Mayor.
it.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed. Thank you much. Old business, we have none. New business, discussion and possible action related to the sign ordinance, and I'll ask Mr. McLaughlin to come back again, and this would be behind tab 9.
For the fun part of the agenda, I'll make this pretty brief in terms of my presentation, but as it relates to the current sign ordinance that we're on the enforcement of, the Board of Commissioners fully adopted this version on April 15th, 2019. Since that time, staff has encountered several issues related to not only negative impacts on local businesses, but issues during the recent political campaign. I think everyone in this room, and by the sound of my voice, is fully aware of the issues that that took place during the political campaign in terms of signs. And there was several main specific areas that caused some of the contention in terms of where they were allowed to be permitted, the time frame that they're allowed to be erected, as well as there's language in our ordinance that does not allow them within 15 feet of the backup curb, or at least the pavement of an intersection or a street. Those were some of the main areas that people raised issues with political signs. In terms of freestanding pole signs, we've been contacted by several business owners with complaints about the removal of the freestanding pole signs as a permitted sign type in our ordinance. So what I'm asking for today is just some direction on at least adopting some language to amend the temporary sign section of the current sign ordinance to coincide with General Statute 136-32B through F, and to address some of those issues raised with respect to the freestanding pole signs.
Okay, what's the wishes of the board? Are there any discussion or questions that you have? Or do you want to direct our town staff to work on this and bring back?
And I do think town clerk put a copy of the general statute
It's behind,
in
it's
your
actually
packets.
behind tab
Yeah.
9 too. Is there any discussion or questions that you might have?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
you know, during the discussion back in April when we passed this ordinance, there was a lot of discussion about monument signs and pole signs. Whereas many folks, myself included, like monument signs. Not every business can facilitate a monument sign. And at that point, the discussion was, what about the business that cannot put a monument sign up because of its geographical location? What course of action does that business owner have? And I do distinctly remember stating that or requesting that there should be some language in our sign ordinance where that business owner could request a variance. But you can't request a variance if the language is not in the ordinance to begin with.
That's correct.
So I think that's where it needs to go, is that we want to be fair and consistent with all of our business owners, not just some, all of them.
Is this going to be a different variance process than we have for the Board of Adjustment? Because
No, I think what
variance-
Mr. Bledford is saying, it would be the same Board of Adjustment process.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he's alluding to is the fact that we took out pole signs as a permitted
We
use.
took out the language.
Which prevents someone from being able to ask for a variance.
But the issue with the variance, as far as the Board of Adjustment, is that it's statutory. So you can't grant a variance if it's not something that is, there's defined terms in the statute. I think there's 4 requirements, and the essential requirement is something that is unique to the land, not to the neighborhood, and that it's not, the fault of, and that it's consistent with the purposes of the variance process and the UDO. So I'm not sure that just putting in the ordinance that you can request a variance is proper under.
Okay.
North Carolina general
I think
statute.
to add on to what Attorney Hartzog is saying is, under those scenarios, the only type of business that would be allowed to even apply is one that would meet the 4 criterion. And it sounds like what you're talking about is maybe a site that has severely sloping topography. But if we just put it in place for that scenario, anyone else who wanted to do a pole sign who didn't have those specific unique conditions wouldn't be in that position. So I don't know if a variance would be the best avenue to allow them to be put back in the ordinance. We could simply just add the language back to the ordinance, but keep ground sign language that is currently in the ordinance in place, so that you have options of, if you wanted to do a monument sign, you could, and they would be regulated, and you could still have the language for pole signs for someone that actually wanted to, and that would eliminate the need to even have a variance.
Well,
But that's
the
just
ground would dictate that. The location would dictate that the ground sign just couldn't be placed there, that the only way to advertise would be the use of a pole sign.
If that's the case, then I think you'd probably have a variance under our current system with the Board of Adjustment, which mirrors the statutory language. I think basically adding language that you can seek a variance under the sign ordinance wouldn't change the criteria that you have to meet under you'd have it under the Board of Adjustment ordinance either way. And it wouldn't change anything to say that you can seek a variance in the sign ordinance. You either can or you can't.
Yeah.
Under the Board of Adjustment.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. McLaughlin, do you want to?
like I said, I think the best avenue to make it a lot cleaner, because when you start getting into this variance language, I think the best option to have, and just from my analysis of it, is to have the option of having both. You would have a site that would be able to do a ground monument sign if they wanted to, and you can have a property that would have the ability to have a pole sign if you want to. Right now, pole signs are prohibited, so the only type of sign you could do would be a ground sign. I think I know where you're going. If you put it back as a permitted use, it opens the door to apply for variance, but that eliminates any other business that doesn't have. I think you could maybe have a scenario where a business felt that they were negatively impacted in a scenario that didn't have a topographical issue.
Correct.
So my point is, by allowing both types of signs back in the ordinance and having regulations that govern both, I think that might be the most prudent approach.
Okay.
But that's just my feedback.
Commissioner Legg, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I agree with Commissioner Bellflower that the monument signs, ground signs are a whole lot more attractive, in my opinion. If we put a loophole in our rules, somebody's going to find a way to take advantage of it. So we're either going to have to go no pole signs or either pole or monument. So you have any input on that side of it, more than what you've already given us?
I
Go
think
ahead.
you can add the reason that this was being readdressed is because of some of the new businesses that are challenging it. And I turn it back over to Mr. McLaughlin in reference to the issue.
And that's my point. I wouldn't move forward with an either or approach. I think the approach of being able to have the freedom to have both, because if you recall, prior to this new ordinance that was adopted in April, we didn't have regulations to govern ground signs. We didn't have any regulations. So if you recall, we put regulations in there that required that a sign be done by a professional sign company and things of that nature.
Right.
We had language that talked about materials and things. I think you guys moved it. That was a little bit too heavy-handed. But we put a significant amount of regulations in for ground signs, but eliminated the pole signs. So I think back to what I was saying before, if you added both back, you have the option of having both type of sign, but you have regulations that govern them separately. You would still have the ground sign language in place that you currently have in terms of two-tiered or tiered approach, where you have a double tenant lot versus lots or properties with more than 2 tenants and up to 10 tenants for your ground sign, and the reduced square footages. But adding the pole sign language back allows both to be able to be permitted sign types with separate regulations that will govern both. And that's, to me, would be the best approach based on what I'm hearing, because every scenario that you're going to get a challenge that I've seen may not specifically be tied to a property issue with slope and topography.
So, Madam Mayor, let
Yes,
me,
sir.
if we do that, then the board would make the decision.
Yes, I would just come back to you with the language you would ultimately move if you felt that was.
I mean, the board would make a decision on which sign would be approved.
No,
We-
I'm saying
Yeah.
you put it in the language outright that both sign types are permitted sign types. So if a business wanted to approach, if Chick-fil-A or some new business wanted to actually do a decorative monument sign, they have that option. But it removes us from being in a situation where someone wanted to do your typical pole sign and I don't have the authority to approve it because it's not a permitted sign type anymore. That's the pulse that I'm typically getting back from businesses who want to be able to do your pole sign to have a little bit higher height of advertising that they aren't allowed to do with a ground sign. Because I think based on the current ordinance, a standalone commercial development, the max height is 10 feet. You couldn't go up to 20 feet unless you had more than 2 tenants on the site.
I'm not sure. It sounds like to me what you're proposing, Chancellor, is moving away from the spirit of the ordinance regarding ground signs.
I would say it's opening the door for more options.
Okay?
Put it that way.
Which means that if a business didn't want to do a ground sign,
Then they could do
then they could do a pole sign.
That's correct.
And that's moving totally away from the spirit. What I'm looking at is taking care or addressing a business that cannot put a ground sign at all because of the location. Their only method of advertising is a pole sign. That's my issue.
The issue with that, with the way the sign ordinance is currently written, is freestanding signs that are pole signs are not a permitted use at all in the ordinance, and you cannot apply for a variance for a use that's not permitted, it's illegal. The only way to allow freestanding pole signs would be to have language that governs them in the sign ordinance, and then if someone wanted a pole sign, that would not require a variance because it would be a permitted use. But they would have the option of ground sign or pole sign. There's no way to restrict a sign type based on a particular property. So until the language is put in the ordinance concerning pole signs, there is no ability to have a pole sign at all in the town limits of Hope Mills. Unless, of course, you have an existing non-conforming sign.
I got that, Betty.
Yep.
I do. I just didn't want to move away from the spirit of the ground monument signs that so many people in our community would like to see continue here.
And I think, like I said, not trying to belabor this point, but to add both back, you're not removing the ability to have a ground sign. What you're removing is a conflict point that I'm starting to see, and it's only been about 5 months.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing an increased pushback. So it's not that we're moving away from having ground signs. It's just allowing another previous sign type to come back in terms of being a permitted type of sign that someone could actually utilize. Okay. Everyone that moves forward, if we move forward this new language, that doesn't mean everybody's just going to go back to pole signs. It just means that if someone wanted to, they could, when as of right now they can't.
Okay. Well, Mayor, I'm open to see what language you want to propose, Chancellor. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm open for that.
Chancellor, I haven't researched this, so this is just thought, but is there a way to draft it such that we allow pole signs only if a monument sign is impractical? They're still a permitted use, but they're only a permitted use to the extent that a monument sign is impractical.
You got it, Dan.
I could explore that language.
You got it, Dan. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's on point.
Who's gonna make that determination?
Yeah.
Chancellor and I can look at it.
Yeah.
Well, because my concern is then you're putting it back.
Well, you'd have to have some criteria as to what makes it impractical or something.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if it's permissible. I just thought off the top of my head, but
I just because
Because
she said topography was one of the ways you couldn't. I'm just wondering what
Well, I
your
think if you
limits.
took that approach, you're going to be teetering very close to drafting language that is the full criterion for a variance to allow that scenario to actually
yeah,
take
but
place.
It wouldn't be in terms of a variance. It would be in terms of
That's my point. So are we actually drafting language to circumvent a variance because the scenarios that you would be creating would be the scenarios that actually make you eligible for a variance.
it would be sort of like an automatic variance, I guess.
That's my
But-
point. So either way you go with this, it's even when we talked about the political signs, when you're talking about trying to find ways to address some of the issues, there is no language that I can come up with that says we don't have to pick up pole signs during political campaign season. There's literally no language. So that's the main reason why I said, look, let's just go along with the general statute. General statute, some of the examples, the general statute says 3 feet from the edge of pavement. That's technically a reduction from 15 feet to 3 feet. So that is a concession. But to the general public, to create a scenario where we're just not going to ever pick up signs, that is not able to happen with legally defensible language that I can draft. So if you're talking about the pole signs, there are areas where we can try to attempt to do some things, but there are some times where we may be teetering in an area we don't want to if we take that approach. I can definitely come back with some options.
Yeah.
Are you looking at a timeline? Bring something back by. I know it has to go back to the planning board too.
I can have something at the next board meeting.
So you want to say January 6th, have him bring back some recommendations, because then it would have to go from here to the planning board.
Yes.
And then come back to us. So,
Yes.
so is that, do we need a motion for that, or can we just?
Now, this is my question. Would you like for that to be a work session? Because if we put this on the agenda, you know that it may take about a good hour.
What do we
So if you
have
want
on
to do a
January
work session
6th? Do we have anything prior to the meeting?
Yes, we do have something prior to the meeting. It's the ADA,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
ADA compliance, public input session.
What
That-
about the week
do
of,
we have
maybe?
That's at 6.
At 6, so would you want to go 5:30? 5,
I can do
5:30?
a 5
How would that
o'clock,
work?
5:30.
It'd be a
I
long
would suggest 5.
5?
Yeah.
So if we did 5 for the
And,
sign
and
ordinance.
just to add to, we had 7 work sessions before, but I do think there are 2 main areas we know we need to work on.
Yeah.
The political signs
Yeah.
and the poll signs. So I don't think this would be some long drawn out 2-hour, 3-hour, 2 work session type of deal. I do think that the language that I'm exploring, I've been talking to the county and to the attorney, I think we should be able to work through those in about an hour.
Okay,
Madam
so-
Mayor.
Yes, sir, would that work for you?
Let me ask this question, please, and Dan, you might have to pitch in on this. Can a determination between a pole sign and a ground sign be made on the size of the lot?
No, I
Or
don't.
does it have to be over the,
I think the size of the lot
Focal
doesn't
part.
factor into it at all. I think the square footages are derived based on the intensity of the zoning classification. But I don't think the size, the actual size of the property comes into play.
or the ground sign does take up a little more room than a pole sign? You can kind of put a parking lot around a pole sign, but it's hard to put around a ground sign.
Madam Mayor, I'll
Yes,
make
sir.
a motion if we need to do
Work
Need
it.
a
session.
motion, have him bring back stuff for a work session.
Consensus.
That's
Consensus.
good.
So is it okay with everyone? Everybody in favor, and will January 6th at 5 work? Okay, all right,
All
so
right.
January 6th at 5.
Thanks.
We'll do sign ordinance.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is discussion of and possible action concerning the stabilization process for the former Episcopal Parish House. Also, an update regarding repairs to the Thomas Campbell Oatman Memorial Chapel, the former Episcopal Church, and an update regarding the completion of the Trade Street Museum. So I guess I'll turn over to Ms. Adams
yes.
for these updates and information.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, at our previous meeting, Commissioner Bellflowers had reported that the remediation and stabilization component for the former Episcopal Parish House would need to be completed by May 1, 2020 in order for the FTCC students to be able to come in and do the renovations on the structure. And in discussion with Commissioner Bellflowers as well, he remarked that Jeff Adolphson, the North Carolina Division of Historic Resources Restoration Specialist, had indicated that he would be willing to come back after the structural engineer report was done. And we did contract with LISIC to prepare that report. I have spoken to Jeff Adolphson, and he explained that he would not mind coming back to review the parish house property, and that he could glance at the LISIC report, but could not spend a lot of time on it. We have sent that report to him. He indicated he would not give an opinion as to whether or not the town should or should not spend the money to save and restore the building, as he is of the opinion that any building can be saved. It is up to the town to decide if the funding is feasible to spend. He did mention that the town has the option of allowing Preservation North Carolina to market the building, typically for a period of a year, to potential buyers that would restore the property. If a potential buyer is found, Preservation North Carolina then places mutually agreed upon covenants on the property prior to closing. In addition, this would place the property back on the tax rolls. So that is open for discussion for the board. I thought it was a very interesting option.
Can you give the rundown on how much the cost of stabilization is, and any recommendation that the town has as far as that stabilization? Because I know it's in need of it now based on the
Right.
tarp on the roof.
Right, the estimate of the LISIC report is $140,047 for stabilization. And they did emphasize in the proposed cost estimates contained within the report that that's based solely on visible conditions of the structure. And then again, the stabilization of the parish house will get the building to where it is safe to begin renovations. Mr. Adolphson indicated with our discussion today that a potential buyer would handle all aspects. We wouldn't necessarily need to do anything at this point. But again, he reminded me that the building would probably continue to deteriorate if there is no, stabilization done.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
But there's no guarantee that somebody will come in and buy that property, right? And you're talking about, he said put the property on the market for a year?
Well, typically what Preservation North Carolina is they market it for up to a year. So it wouldn't, after a year, if it had not been sold, then everything would have to be reevaluated again. But typically, it's like when you sign an agreement with a real estate agent. Okay, I'm only going to market your place for 6 months. It's typically for North Carolina, Preservation North Carolina, he indicated it's typically for up to a year. They will market it for you. They take care of everything. And they do have resources for potential buyers. There are people, he did indicate to me today, there are people that's what they do. That's where they look to invest their money for whatever reasons. It wouldn't be a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. He said he's seen 2 that he's been involved in that have been saved that way. So I don't know how long he's been working, but he's had 2 that he said it's an option.
Do we have any recommendation from our staff as far as what their concerns would be as far as what we would need to do to maintain it until such time? I know while it's on the market, you usually have to bring something so that it won't further deteriorate. So
That would be kind of logistical nightmare probably, because I know that inspections and the fire marshal has indicated that it's, they want waivers signed before people could go in and out, but it is to the point where I believe if nothing is done, it is in condemnable condition from what my inspections department has indicated, if we don't do something.
okay. Discussion, comments?
I got a bunch.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Recognize Commissioner Marley.
So for stabilization, we're looking at $140,047, and I got it off of a report here I looked up from 9/16/2019. I guess that was the date it was given to the board, from a site visit on 8/20/2019. And that's just for the stabilization, correct?
Correct.
So this organization or this company comes in, they market it for a year. We spend $140,000 to stabilize it, and it sits for a year after that, and nothing else is done to it. Then we've wasted $140,047 because it's going to deteriorate. The work that we've done is going to deteriorate for a year while it sits there. My other question is, in this report, I see where it's gonna cost for the repairs and everything, if I'm not mistaken, another $212,513 for a total of $352,560. And that was just based on what could be seen by the eye. That's not if there's anything that comes about afterwards that's unforeseen. That's not none of that. No contingencies, no nothing. So to me, you're pushing that price tag well over 400,000, possibly $500,000 for this property that's in condemnable condition now. I don't see where that's good money. I do not know what the tax value is on that property right now as it sits. I dare say it'd be worth $352,000 as it sits right now. I can't imagine that small parcel of land would be worth that. Also, just some more comments, if I may, Mayor. I just, we've been with the parish house, the chapel, the museum. We've been with all this for well over 4 years now. I think it's time that the board takes some steps and get some projects completed so we can move on with town business. I do not think right now, in my opinion, spending $352,000 or $352,560 right now on that property is good business for the town. I feel like we could take that $140,000. I understand that $140,000, looking at the budget, I believe it was already approved in the budget for the stabilization. Is that correct? Was that approved already? I may have read it wrong.
No.
If I did, there's no money in the budget. Okay, I'm wrong on that end. I may have looked at it different, read something different. But anyway, if we were looking at $140,000 for stabilization, we could take that $140,000 and just about finish the church project and the museum and knock out 3 things at one swoop. So, that would be my suggestion. I don't know if anybody has anything further, but people that I've talked to, there are some there for it. Some want to save the building, but the majority of people I've talked to think it's a waste of time and money. And
Mayor Pro Tem is.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
I echo on what Commissioner Marley is saying. I think that we have the museum, we have we're saving the church. We're trying to work on this heritage plan project, and I just don't think it's a good use of tax money to keep investing in this property. I'm not saying that it's not important. I think it is important. I think that we've just waited and we've gotten to the point where it's not economically feasible to try to save the building.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Didn't we just spend a lot of money on AC and stuff in those buildings? One of them?
That was the church.
Okay.
Commissioner Ray, not the parish house.
How much have we got in the church to this point? Have we spent any money on it?
Oh, yeah, we've put a new heating and air conditioning. The church has never been a question of restoration. The previous board had, indicated that they wanted the repairs that we're working on. Public Works is working on getting quotes for repair to the steeple and a new roof for the church.
Do we have an idea of how much that will be, the cost to do that? Is there
On the church?
a estimate of any
I
kind?
don't have an estimate yet. No, ma'am.
Mayor.
Okay.
I'm going off memory here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but not too long ago, didn't they vote to do the demolition on that structure already?
Previous board voted in January of 2018, I believe it was, but then they rescinded that.
Do you know what the cost was then for demolition? Did anybody seek that information?
Just put in the budget. It was actually put in the budget.
The amount for the demolition, but I honestly can't remember what that was. Yeah, that was the previous budget.
2018 budget.
Yeah,
Will we have a way of finding out what that amount was?
Yeah, we can.
I don't remember what it was.
Really remembers.
I'm not sure if we ever actually got a quote.
But we had budgeted some money in there for that demolition.
There were funds for several demolitions, not for any one in particular. So we never got.
It was included in the CIP.
Yeah.
We were estimating.
Sure it
I
was.
think we put 30,000 because there was two other structures in town we were looking at, and we estimated maybe about 10,000 apiece.
10 to
Mayor.
11,000.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, he's got to finish his thought.
Yeah, I was just going to ask for Ms. Adams not to put you on the spot. But and you said, what was your comment about the staff recommendation? Our staff recommendation has been through the building.
Well,
It was really the cost prohibitive
yeah, I
to
mean,
repair the building.
it is cost.
So cost
Staff
outweighs
doesn't
the
look
gain.
For the town, that it's cost prohibitive, but that we are headed down the road right now that if it's not currently incondemnable, it will be soon condition.
Okay,
So,
Commissioner
yeah.
Edwards.
If nothing else is done to the building.
Okay, it seems like back in 2018, might have been 2017, that Dr. Rayner had recommended and he offered to tear down the building and build us a parking lot. Could we talk to him again about that, or would he still be interested?
Don't know because
But it's a possibility.
I don't think you can talk about acquisition of property without at regular board
true.
meeting.
That's true.
Okay,
Take it back.
okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir?
I want to address something Commissioner Marley said. Now, he's incorrect. I don't believe Jeff Adolphson asked us to spend $140,000 to stabilize that building. That's not what he asked for. So you're incorrect, sir. The commission also never asked for $140,000 either. What Jeff Adolphson is asking for is to advertise the property as is for up to a year. Now, we can do that or not do that. But we're not spending $140,000. We're not spending $352,000. We're not spending anything. So that was the only other option. I think I'm correct. You can stop me or change me
Okay,
if I'm wrong, but I know I am.
But is it not true that that option is for them to restore the building to buy the property?
That's
They can't buy the property with anticipation of using the property for something else. They have to
Right.
restore the building.
Right.
Right.
So that's the question, I think.
Covenants would
Yeah.
be mutually agreed upon covenants that the building would be restored per period and, you know, it would save the building, basically, is what he indicated to me. But no, they couldn't buy it and then build a
Right.
house there or something.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it would
And
be.
the property itself would be that piece of property, the church property, and the other piece of property goes together, so that parsonage just sits on that plat that's very small. So that would be my thought, would be, would somebody invest that kind of money to renovate it? For what use could they use it for with no parking? I mean, I know of a couple of places that have been purchased, but I think that they were purchased through the preservation because of all the amenities that came with it.
Yeah.
The building, as where it was located, opened it up for other stuff they could do. And I think there might be one in Bladenboro, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Madam Mayor, given the amount of cost to stabilize it and given the timeline of May 1st, I think the only option was from Jeff Adolphson was to try to market the building. And there's going to be no cost to the town at all. I mean, I agree that, you know, if we're looking at $140,000, the best place to put that would be to finish our existing projects that we have now. Especially the Trade Street Museum that building we've had for over 2 years, and it's not open. But that's a discussion for the board.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am? Did I understand you to say we have to fix the building in order to market it?
No,
We don't have to fix it.
he did not indicate.
No, we do not.
No, they market it as is.
And if it's condemnable, is that,
Well, it hasn't been condemned
I mean, but
yet,
if it's not stabilized, it could be condemnable, right? I mean,
don't
that,
think- I don't think Mr. Adolphson would have recommended this option if he didn't think that it wasn't a viable option
Correct.
for the town.
Correct.
I mean, he spent a great length of time discussing it with me today.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it is up to the board to decide.
yes, sir.
I don't like to do this, but I'll put you on the spot again if you don't mind. And this is a hard question to ask you, but if the town didn't own that building, would it already be condemned by our inspections department?
Well, I'd have to ask our inspections department.
If the
If we didn't own it, would it already be condemned? Or
You said yes.
if the town didn't own it?
I'm sorry I had to ask that question. I just wanted to know.
I'm
So,
glad you did.
Yes, ma'am.
But it needs to be stabilized by May 1, correct?
Well,
Well, that's
option
for
the
that's for any of the
That's
students to
coming in.
work on it.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt us to put it on the market or,
Mm-hmm.
and
See where it goes. But
It's
I
gonna
mean,
get worse.
not up for a year, but if you wanted to advertise it for 6 months, and then make that the deadline.
that's the only thing you could do is put a timeline on it.
That's what my recommendation
Yeah,
would be to
because
the board.
the next year, it would deteriorate more.
Give it a
Mayor.
6 month, and if it's not sold, then it's been final decisions made.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
But-
I don't know. Given the answer that we just received, this report I looked at, the pictures I'm looking at in this report, and I understand about the marketing the building, but there's no guarantee on marketing the building if somebody will come along and do it. And if we wait another year, it's going to delay other projects that longer. I would just like to make a motion if I could.
Yes,
And
sir.
my motion would be that the town take no further action towards stabilization of that building and direct the town manager to bring back a cost for demolition at the January 6th meeting.
Can I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
is that enough time for us to get information together? It's a short period of time. Less than, 3 weeks?
Well, and the holidays in there, I don't know that we'll get a quote back by January 6th, but
Can,
Could you have it about the second meeting in January?
we're not having a second
Right.
meeting, we're
You
having a
want-
special meeting.
So it'll
you
have to
want
be
to leave
February.
you want to leave it to the 6th and see what happens? Because I know if you've just recently used a company that so I have a motion, I have a second, and that motion would require some information by January the 6th. All those in favor any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Commissioner Legg?
I voted yes.
She voted yes. So 4-1. Okay, the other.
I hated to do that, but you gotta do something.
Right. The next is update regarding repairs to Thomas Campbell Oatman Memorial Chapel.
Yes, in your packet, staff, as I stated earlier, staff is continuing to obtain quotes for the repairs to the church steeple and the new roofing. Once we have those quotes, we'll place it on a future agenda for board consideration.
Ma'am,
Yes, sir.
oh, you have something?
Yeah, no, I was going to recognize you.
Ms. Adams, is there any way that we can get a hard timeline, a hard cost estimate and a hard timeline for completion of the church and the museum?
Well, I mean, we can try to have a timeline for you, but I don't know that it's going to be an accurate timeline. I can't guarantee that. Public Works staff has been doing a lot of this on their own, especially the museum, and I do have an update on that. But
In other words, I'd like to see us move on with those two projects and go ahead and get the church done, get the museum done, so those two buildings can start being used and functioning, like we've talked about. But I'd like to, as soon as you can, I'd like to get a hard estimate on the completion of what it's going to cost and a timeline for what kind of time we're looking at for completion.
okay, I think in the budget, this current budget, we do have money budgeted for the museum. So, and regarding the update to the Trade Street Museum, the architect has redesigned the site plan to include changes that move the HVAC compressor that is located on the side of the building to the rear of the building. This will accommodate the location of ADA parking requirements and handicap ramp to the rear of the building and allow for drive-through access around the building. Public Works staff and the inspections department is currently in the process of reviewing the changes to the site plan design. So I'll try to come back the January 6th meeting with an estimate on the cost for both the chapel and the museum and a possible timeline.
I would appreciate it if you could. I know we've asked you to do a lot for the January 6th meeting, and I understand that. So, whatever you can do would be appreciated, so we can look at moving those projects forward. And I thank you.
Got my marching orders.
Okay. Any other concerns or thoughts on this item? Okay. All right, we move next to, oh, I know. I had one question about the museum. I know we ordered, did we order a program for the inventory of the items that we have? Did that program come in, the technology come in?
Yes.
Okay.
We have that and a computer. We have a computer, a printer, copier, scanner, and the inventory program that Chairperson Pat Hall had indicated that Jody Fraser had said was what they needed to order. So yes, ma'am, we have gotten that. And I believe they have also, there's a copier that's going to be donated as well.
So where are we going to locate that so that they could?
We're waiting for the museum. We don't have room here set up for them.
Well, I mean, but are they going to be able to do that within that building, or is it going?
We'll have to wait for the building to be for a certificate of occupancy.
So could that be something that could be done off-site somewhere at some other location, or is there something so that by the time the building's ready, maybe that there's stuff ready to go in it, an inventory, because that'll be another holdup once the building's ready, right?
Right.
So I was just wondering, is there somewhere off-site that, I mean, I don't
know. we'd have to look into that. My concern would be, you know, setting the computer up on an off-site location and then something happening to it.
Right.
You know,
So
and
whoever was
we
going
don't
to do,
have control. If it's not in our building, we're not gonna have control over it.
who would be responsible for completing the inventory?
Well, I was under the impression that the Historic Preservation Commission was doing.
Would do the inventory.
Was gonna be doing the inventory. They've, Ms. Hall had asked for the training component to be included in what was purchased.
Okay.
So that they could be trained.
So I guess that question about the stocking that, or putting stuff in the museum would have to go before the commission, before we,
Yeah.
but I think that's something they could be doing now. If we're gonna get the museum open, they could be getting that ready so that the opening also could be, there wouldn't be such a delay after we're ready.
Mayor.
I don't know. Yes, sir.
Is there any way we can get that training component for them?
Well, it's included in what.
They've
Oh,
got
it's
it.
already
Yeah.
included, okay.
It's included. We're just waiting to set it up and let them.
So maybe after, if we have the timeline on the 6th, after that, then we could have the conversation with the commission about when and what they would do with the materials that we already have. Because the good news is you have it. So the technology piece is here.
I mean, I can look in to see if there's a room here that we could set it all up, but
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure that we have that room.
And space would be then for whatever inventory they wanted to bring in to they could probably take pictures, and I don't know how the program's set up, so I guess that's something they would have to determine. Okay, but it's good to know we've got it already, so that way it can be done.
Mayor,
Yes, sir?
is there a possibility for a period of time that we can move the stuff around in the commissioner's room and put that stuff along one wall and put the table against the other wall? We don't use that room very much. I know you used it tonight, but just a
But, yeah,
thought.
we
I'm
can
just
look
trying to
in-
help.
We can look into, possibly setting it up somewhere here.
Yes, ma'am.
But wouldn't that be dependent upon, do we know how much inventory that they have?
I
Like,
have no idea.
I mean, it might be 5 items, it might be 25 items.
I
Yeah.
know what's in the storage building, and they have a storage building that, you know, we have been paying for, and there's a lamp there, there was a table set up. This was previously before I was even manager. The former manager set that up so that they could go in there and do inventory.
So is there a staff liaison person that oversees what items we have, how many items we have, and making sure we're putting up those items that we have?
No, we don't have anybody that has seen or, no, they've not shared any of that information
But
with
this is a
us.
town building, correct? This is a town museum, and the items that go into it are gonna belong to the town, correct?
Or the Historic Preservation, Society, or the commission, well, no, the society wouldn't, but no, I've not been privy to what they have or don't have. They've not shared that with me.
Are these items to be donated, or are they town-owned items, I guess is the question.
They've been, I think they've been donated, and they've just been secured by the commission members. So, but the reason there was a need for an inventory is because we don't really know what we have.
What we have.
And then we were gonna seek, at one point, we were gonna seek donations from other people. And then the actual stuff that's down in the storage house was stored in an office up here. And that office was turned into stormwater office, and that, all those materials, and a lot of it was stuff that had been collected by the town through town records. And then there were some other things that had been put in there by former mayors. And that information, is what was taken to the storage house. It was stuff that the town had received, one way or the other.
Ma'am,
Yes, sir.
I've got to tend to agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. We need to have a staff member that can oversee that stuff. I'm not saying anything is wrong, I'm just saying we need to know what we have and what we don't have and a way to track it and record it. And that's just my suggestion, that we have somebody to work with that committee to get an inventory list of that stuff so we can monitor and keep track of it. And I worry about sitting in a storage building and worry about somebody breaking in and destroying it, tearing it up, taking it. I think it would be better if Melissa could find a staff member that would accept that responsibility.
Well, and I'd have to prepare a memo to the Historic Preservation Commission that the board has directed this as well, because, I mean, we would need their cooperation.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Because otherwise, we could have a museum with nothing to go into it right now. They cannot turn over the items.
All I know about is what's in the storage building. And what's in the storage building, it is not a lot of stuff.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Did I understand you to say that when we had an area here, I think it was when Mayor Dees was here, that he had a room with a lot of this stuff stored?
That was all taken to the storage house.
So all that stuff is in the storage
Yeah,
building?
but that was what was left behind. I think the rest of the stuff was, some was in possession of Mayor Dees, some was in the possession of, I think Mayor Bradford actually turned over some of his. I know that Eddie Brower, I know that there's been some things along the way, but as far as what there is, I don't know. The only thing I know about was what was in that office, and it was really a lot of collections of papers
Yes.
and tax records and ledgers.
Yeah, there's some books and ledgers
Yeah.
and tax papers, ornaments, old
Yeah.
ornaments, memorabilia
Yeah.
of the July 4th, the big celebration anniversary.
Centennial.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. A lot of the pictures and stuff that were in those collections, I think, I think the Historical Commission has them. There was a lot of pictures that were made by Mayor Bradford or made by Mayor Dees or made by others, but I know there was a lot of documents like that were, some of them we've seen in some of the poster-sized things that are in some of the businesses.
Right. There's also Dr. Rayner, when he was doing his renovation of the old town hall. Apparently there was some equipment that was in the basement that monitored the old dam, had something to do with the old dam, and that was removed, and that is located, I believe, in the, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, in that where you took that equipment was the storage building?
It's either the storage building or the museum.
I think I saw it in the storage building when I visited there recently. And it's kind of large, bulky things.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what it did or.
Right. So I guess is the board directing Ms. Adams to send something to the commission about the inventory?
Do I need
How
to
would-
put
what
that in
type-
form of a motion, Mayor?
Okay, what kind of motion, what would that motion need to say? I'll ask our attorney.
I guess if you're wanting the town to appoint a staff liaison to the commission for purposes of inventory for the museum, and then directing town manager to prepare a memo to the commission to state as such.
We could do that by consensus, right? Would we need a motion?
I don't know that you need one. It couldn't hurt.
couldn't hurt to have a motion. That way, we're empowering her to send that letter or to make that notation or to, so it's in the minutes then. So, or,
If I may,
okay, Commissioner Legg.
I'd be willing to make a motion that the board instructs the town manager. If I'm wrong now, tell me, so I can correct it. Instructs the town manager to appoint someone that can work with the Historical Preservation Committee to get an inventory list and monitor what's going on with the items that would go in the museum. Is that close enough? I need something deeper.
That'll work.
To have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed.
I hope they don't get offended. If they do, they do.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action for authorization of town manager and mayor to contact NCDOT relating to Highway 59 status. I put this on the agenda or requested it because after talking to a couple of people through FAMPO, and both myself and town manager Adams attend regularly FAMPO meetings, and what I discovered was that Highway 59 is from 95 to Rayford Road, and at one time 59 went all the way to Virginia. Now it's basically, I think, 7.34 miles of highway, and if we go and talk to, would first have an appointment with DOT, which would probably be Mr. Hines, and what we would be requesting would be if we could request that this part of 59 be changed to a business 59, a low impact highway, and then have signage and redirection for trucks and those that would be going through from 95 or 301 through to Rayford Road, that they would be channeled over to 162. And it would also remove trucks off of Main Street. There would be going to 162 as a truck route. And the reason why it would be important, we would go make that contact, then we'd have to bring back a resolution to the board to then take to DOT to ask for those things to change. That change would then mean that since they're working on the new bridge, it's an opportunity to get that signage and all that stuff done to help eliminate some of the traffic on Main Street.
That's unless they're delivering in town, correct?
Yeah, and so what we would be asking is just for the board to authorize us to represent the board, and then we would bring back from DOT whatever we could get as a recommendation that they would go along with. But the terminology is to change it to a low-impact highway instead of what it currently is, a highway that if you look and read a lot of information, it actually did go all the way to Virginia at one time, but it's cut off now at Rayford Road, and then 401 picks up on the other side. So do we need to have a motion to do that, or authorizing us to represent the town? What would you recommend?
I think a consensus probably is okay.
Okay, so is it all right with the board that we do that?
I think it's a good idea.
Is it
Bring us
okay?
back a resolution.
Okay. And we'll have to work around the holiday and whether or not we can get an appointment with Mr. Hines, so we can't put a date on it yet. Okay. All right, next we have reports and information items. Are there any questions in reference to the manager's report? It is item behind tab 12. I know the request was that we not require the manager to have to read it because it is printed, but is there any discussion in reference to it? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
And I have some updates.
All righty,
I
good.
have some additional
Can
information as
he?
well.
Do you want to let her do the updates before
Yes,
you?
I
Yeah,
think
go ahead
it'd
and
be
do
a
your
good idea.
updates before he asks you the question.
Okay, all right. Thursday, January the 16th at 4 p.m. has been chosen as the best date and time for the meeting with the members of the media. I can have Town Clerk Jane Starling send out notices, public notice, and we can prepare an invitation and send to the media. I've gotten some information from Parks and Rec concerning additional revenues. As far as basketball goes, minor league basketball, a rental agreement between Parks and Rec and the Fayetteville Panthers has been finalized. The Fayetteville Panthers is an independent minor league basketball team with teams operating in the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, and southeastern United States. With the agreement, the town of Hope Mills and the Panthers will play 7 games in the Parks and Recreation Gym from mid-February to the end of May 2020, bringing in a revenue of approximately $1,660. The 2019-2020 youth basketball participation, there has been an increase of 40 participants in the Hope Mills Youth Basketball League, bringing the total to 365 participants. This has yielded an increase in revenue of $1,200. Parks and Recreation staff have met with Lakeside Recreation Outfitters of Hope Mills on December the 12th to discuss a possible partnership for the provision of non-motorized watercraft rentals at the lake. Their proposals will include kayaks, canoes, and paddleboat rentals. Another meeting will be scheduled in mid-January 2020 to review a draft of their business plan and proposal to the town. Town Hall will be closed from 11:30 to 2:30 on Friday for our annual Christmas luncheon with Town Hall staff. We will post notices on Facebook and the Town Hall doors. Then I have a letter received from Schnabel Engineering that I'd like to read into the record concerning the lowering of the lake and the protocol. And it reads, it's from Mark Landis. I wanted to write you to discuss lake lowering protocols for the town. I'm aware that you and the lake committee occasionally need to lower the lake for maintenance around the lake rim, dock repair, or improvements to the recreational facilities. We understand that this has been done in preparation for 2 approaching hurricanes. Lowering the lake for maintenance is certainly normal, but I would like to suggest some engineering considerations. The dam and function are still reaching a static loading condition. That means that the lake water has been working its way through the embankment and the foundation to reach a pressure level that will be static over time with a normal pool elevation. When the lake level is lowered, the static condition is reset, pressures in the dam change, and the core portion of the embankment can partially desaturate. This is not problematic when occasional maintenance is performed, but I would suggest that this happens on a less frequent basis. I realize the lake was lowered in preparation of Hurricane Dorian, but want you to know that lowering the lake for these larger storms is not necessary and adds to the cyclic loading within the dam. These larger storms usually can refill the lake within a few hours, such that little to no storage capacity is added by lowering the lake. If the lake needs to be lowered for maintenance, we suggest that the rate of draining should not exceed 1 foot per day, and the refilling should also match the 1 foot per day in rise. If such events can be limited to 1 time a year, that would be fine. After the lake is refilled to normal pool, I suggest that Mr. Cisco perform a visual inspection of the embankment to look for seeps, turbid water in the drains, sloughs on the slopes, or tension cracks on the crest. He could contact us if he sees any issues or it has any questions. I hope this helps the town in planning for lake lowering and to understand why we prefer to limit cyclic loading of the dam. And that's my additional updates.
And I think that is important, that we probably could post that, because that's the biggest concern people have is the water level, and I think knowing that the dam will take care of itself, that's good news. And Commissioner Marley has a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for that, because I learn something new every day. But the only question I had was, I noticed on the manager's report that the Johnson Street sidewalk project is still waiting on CSX and PWC utility reviews.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask the board. I'd like to see maybe the mayor, town manager, and the attorney get together and see if we can't approach CSX and PWC and see if we can't put some heat underneath them, see if they can get that done, because I noticed this on the manager's report, you know, meeting after meeting after meeting, that we're waiting on their utility reviews. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't see why it's taking so long to get those reviews done. Is there anything that y'all can do on your end to maybe go talk to them and see what the holdup is? Or maybe had the attorney draft a letter or something?
I can't.
I honestly,
I can
I
ask
don't
the staff.
know
We can ask
that
the
would
staff.
help. It may hinder.
I agree.
Because they're bureaucratic, just like we are. They have to go through their,
It's just we've
their
been,
cycles, and, they have their own protocols, and they take their time on things.
oh yeah, no doubt.
But,
I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, I know there's nothing,
I mean, I don't know, Mr. Cisco, do you have a recommendation on how they would take that?
The wheels of government roll slow.
Slow,
And
exactly.
CSX is slower still.
Yeah, exactly.
We have executed the preliminary engineering agreement with CSX this past summer. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head. When we did that, we worked with the DOT to establish essentially a milestone timeline for that project. In DOT's experience with the CSX, they have helped us establish a let date for that project in September of 2020, knowing that CSX works at the speed of bureaucracy. Other than that, you know, they're in contact with them. Our engineer that's working that out of the Smithfield office actually went to school with the person at CSX, and he's got personal contact with them, and that's still not helping us move it any quicker.
I appreciate it. I just asked the question. You know, I don't know. It just seems like it's taking so long. I mean, it's been years.
It does.
They've been working on this project for years.
Well, those projects, they tell us a project like that, you can expect to work on it 3 to 4 years.
4 years.
Because the vast majority of it is paperwork. We just do reams and reams of paperwork for that funding.
I appreciate the education.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had. I'm sorry.
Okay. On the Municipal Advisory Committee, the meeting that was canceled, somebody needs to notify them that you have a new representative on that committee, because I'm not being notified of the meetings
Okay,
until it's known that there's a new member.
okay.
Okay? All right, any other questions for Ms. Adams in reference to her update? Thank you for that information. The pastors, Coffee with Pastors is on for the 18th at 9.
Yes, I believe it is the 18th at 9 a.m. Yeah.
Okay, so we probably need to, and that, you guys are invited to that also. It's, it will be all because we have such a variety of new pastors in Hope Mills. We've invited them all to come and join in together and start knowing what's going on with the town, and also the things that they do, like Sunrise Service, National Day of Prayer. Those are events that they take care of with help of staff. Okay, we have our reminders. She's given us information as far as the staff luncheon. and Christmas holidays coming up. The town offices will be closed the 24th through 26th, and also January 1st for New Year's Day. January 6th is going to be a busy meeting with the stuff going on, so just remember 5 o'clock we'll be here. Staff comments, Ms. Darling? No. Ms. Adams? Mr. Hartzog? Okay, official comments. Anyone for official comments? Okay, I'll start with Commissioner Legg and we'll go down.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to thank everyone who came out this evening for this meeting. I want to congratulate Chef Glenn for earning his award, and certainly want to congratulate the Southview Key Club. They're a very essential tool that we use in Hope Mills government, especially with Parks and Recreation. I look forward to working the new term with our new board. I hope everything goes well. Other than that, I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Commissioner Marley?
I think Commissioner Legg covered everything, but I wanted to apologize to Melissa for the questions tonight and putting her on the spot. I didn't know I was going to ask those questions till it came up, and so I just wanted to apologize to her for putting her on the spot. So.
She can handle it.
Mayor Pro
tough.
Tem McCray?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Holland and his team for the clean audit that we received. And the Parks and Recs Department has been very busy with all of the holiday festivities. I have enjoyed all of them. And I like the direction that we're going. We're trying to partnership with some of the other areas to try to generate some other revenue in the Parks and Recs Department. And I would like to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all as well. And thank you for all that you do.
Commissioner Edwards?
Well, I'd like to say 3 dittos from what everybody else has said. There's no need me repeating them, but I would like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, be safe, and hope to see you all back here on the 6th.
Okay. Commissioner Bellflowers?
Thank you, Mayor. Home run, Drew, and home run, Lamarco. Excellent work. Merry Christmas, and thanks to everybody who came tonight.
And I too would like to just ditto those remarks, but also the fact that all of our staff has been very busy. And the fire department Saturday, I think, was a gracious host for all those little children with Santa Claus. And then, of course, all that we've had going on with the additional activities. All staff has been involved. So that's one good thing about this Hope Mills staff. Melissa, you've done a great job creating a family of staff. They hold each other up, prop each other up, and work excellent together. And it does not go unnoticed. I think every time we're at any event, it's always the number of our staff that are there, and a lot of them just because they want to. So kudos to you for that. And again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And the nominating committee meets Thursday. Okay, so we've got nominating committee and clergy, coffee, and that's it except for the Christmas festivities with staff coming up. Okay. All righty. Thank you. And do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
for the last time in
What?
2019, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I forgot. Closed session. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to make a motion to conduct a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A3 to consult with the attorney on matters within the attorney-client privilege and pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A6 to discuss a personnel matter.
No, we're not
Not.
discussing a personnel.
No.
That's
No.
the attorney-client.
Just the attorney-client. Okay.
All right,
Strike that
All
part.
right. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. And if we'll move quickly, we'll be back quickly. We'll go to the front conference room. At this time, I'll call our meeting back to order. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to seal the minutes of the closed session until further time, as the release of the information would no longer frustrate the purpose of the closed session, and further no action was taken.
Have a motion to have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Seeing none opposed, do we now have another motion?
I have a motion, the last one for 2019. I'd like to make a motion again that we adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
And everybody say aye and good night.
Aye. Merry Christmas.